My client wants to sell her four rental condos that she bought almost 10 years ago. She was a financial advisor herself. She bought a whole bunch of condo back in 2013, 2014, 2015. And she recently came to our office and wanted to talk about how to sell all this rental property. It's just because she is just fed up of being a landlord and she just want to get rid of all of her condo. Now, why we are talking about condo sales recently. So, if you know the real estate market in Canada right now, especially the condo buildings that started back in the pandemic time, a lot of them were sold for very high price. In the GTA, you will see condo which are like 600 square foot, 500 square foot. These condos were sold almost for 600, 700, $800,000 range, depending on the location. A lot of them were sold over $1,000 square feet. Now, if you look at the rent from those condo units, the average one bedroom rent from those condos can be expected somewhere between $2,500 at the top if they're at demand area where there are lots of people that want to rent those places. If you look at the two-bedroom condos, then probably 3,000 to $3,500 depending on the areas we're talking about. But they're not going to give you rent, which is, let's say, $5,000. No, that's not going to happen because people who are able to make a $5,000 rent, they are not in the rental market. Those people are already buying their own property. Most people who are renting either can't afford the big houses. They probably are temporary people who don't want to make a big commitment and buy a big assets. So in my client's case, he bought them quite a long time ago. She made good money on most of those properties because she has been holding them for almost 10 years and she has gains in all of her property. But I'm going to talk about what are some of the factors that are working against those decisions. Now, if you look at the MLS listing right now, MLS is the one that has all the listing for new property sales. So you will see a lot of condo owners, either they are selling pre-construction or they're selling new condos that were handed over to them by the developer. Number one reason why people are not very optimistic about condos is just pure negative cash flow. Back in the days when the interest rates were falling, if you look at the interest rate trajectory for the last 30 years, interest rate has been falling 10, 15% range to almost nothing at the peak of pandemic time. So this falling interest rate makes those mortgages very much attractive. So basically, people are getting mortgage for free, especially during the pandemic time. So when somebody has free money from the bank and the renter is paying off the substantial mortgage amount, and even if it has a $300 negative cash flow, when I say negative cash flow, what I mean is how much money you have to pay out of pocket. So if you are a condo owner, you have to pay your mortgage. So let's say that's $2,000. And then if it's a new building, then there's a $500 condo fee, depending on the building. And then there's a property tax. Normally, the utilities, the new buildings, they're often paid by or shared by the tenant. So if you have a one bedroom condo, then total cost of owning that condo is anywhere from 2,500 to $3,000. And if you can rent out that place for any 2,000 to $2,500, then you probably have a negative cash flow of $500 max at the end of the month. That number is fine because most landlords who are buying these condos are expecting a price appreciation for those condos. So as price goes up, they can collect some of those negative cash flow back. So some of those $500 losses, they can cover those by price appreciation because they probably bought the condo for, let's say, $300,000. Now it's $500,000. So they can cover some of those monthly cash flow losses. Now, during the pandemic time, monthly payment for mortgage, condo fees, and the property taxes, those were manageable because the interest rates were so low. Now that the interest rate has skyrocketed, the mortgage payment has gone up from $2,000 to almost $4,000 for some of these mortgages because these are big mortgages. When you are buying this $800,000 condo, you probably have a $600,000 mortgage. On a $600,000 mortgage, if I assume a 6% rate of interest, that's almost $36,000 only for the interest payment. So if I divide 36,000 by 12, every month your interest portion is almost $3,000. So you're not paying down anything on your mortgage. Plus, when you add condo fee and property tax, it's going above $4,000 carrying cost. So if your rental income for those condos 20 is 2,500, $3,000 range, because that's the going rate right now, you're losing over $1,500, in some cases $2,000 every month. Now that is a problem because those price appreciation, meaning that if somebody is buying a property for 800,000, they're expecting it to go to $1 million. That's not happening anymore because nobody is going to buy a condo which has a negative cash flow of $2,000 a month. They're not going to buy that condo. So we have been seeing a whole bunch of condos listing in the market and there is not enough buyer because why would you buy a condo with a negative cash flow where you know for sure that it's not going to go up pretty soon? So that is the main reason why we are seeing a whole bunch of people who bought those condos back in the pandemic time and they're trying to get rid of those condos. People who bought 5, 7, 8, 10 years ago, they probably are fine because they probably bought it at $300,000, $400,000 range. So they probably will be fine. But people who bought these condos during the height of the pandemic, they're suffering. They're bleeding money every month. Now, on top of this rising interest rate, there are other reasons why it's not going to work because there is discussion in the government that the government is trying to cap immigration because they brought so many people during the pandemic time and people are talking about over immigrating Canada, right? So people are not very happy, and that's why they're capping international students, they're capping permanent residents to Canada. So that is going against the housing market because the reason why housing market had a great run back for the last 5, 6 years is because every year we were bringing 500,000 people to Canada. And in one point for the last 2, 3 years, we brought over 1 million people every year. So that was the reason why we saw huge growth in housing price. But as Canada is capping those immigration number, we will have a negative impact on the house price. So I already talked about rising interest rate and how it's affecting the cash flow. And there is, in Canadian culture, we have been seeing that there is anti-immigration sentiment that is going up. We also have seen anti-landlord sentiment because the government, both sides of the government, either it's liberal, conservative, or NDP, you name it, every political party has been blaming landlords for this housing crisis. It's very short-sighted view because owning a property is not illegal in Canada. You are allowed to own a property as long as you are getting the mortgage with the right sources of income, right sources of down payment. There is nothing wrong owning a property as long as you don't cheat you don't fraud the income verification, all those kind of things. But because the political rhetoric, there is a growing concern and sentiment against landlords. And landlords are saying that we had enough. We don't want to deal with it anymore. We just want to offload our rental properties and move our money somewhere else. Maybe in the stock market, maybe in the bond market, maybe in GIC. There are other ways that people can grow their wealth. Housing had a great run. It's not the only way to make money. Then, recently, in the recent budget, we have the capital gain tax rate increase. So if you made money in real estate on a rental property and your gain is over 250,000 in a year, you will be paying more taxes to the government after June 25th. So that is also a very negative sentiment amongst the real estate investors because if you are taxing at a higher rate, people are not going to deploy their capital here. So that is also going against the housing market. And then the ever ending tenant landlord board. If somebody doesn't want to pay in Ontario, it's a nightmare to get rid of that uh, tenant. And I understand there are landlords who are not very good with their tenant too, but the system is inefficient. The tenant landlord board is backed up. They don't hear your case for at least 6 months, sometimes a year. It's very inefficient. So landlords are saying that enough is enough. We have to make our mortgage payments to the banks because banks are not going to waive your mortgage payment if your tenant is not paying. And you can't get rid of your tenant because of all this regulation. So that is also negative on the housing market. And the last one I would say is the greater scrutiny on anti money laundering. And this is actually a positive sign because Canada is known for whitewashing all the corrupt money from all over the world. And it's very unfortunate because a lot of people from corrupt countries laundered money in Canada. They put it through the real estate. And once you sell the real estate, it's all white money. This is a very bad reputation for Canada, and Canada finally is trying to catch some of those. So they penalized TD Bank recently. I think they also penalized RBC for failing to report all those anti money laundering issues. So I hope that they will work on it more closely so that we don't become a country of corrupt money, even though this is going against housing market. But I think this is a very positive sign and we should welcome this. But we want the government to do more. There is not enough catching of these frauds. But the only sign I see that is in favor of the housing market is the slow building start. Because of the rising interest rate, builders are not building that many new projects. When projects doesn't start, there is not enough new supply in the housing market. And that's the only positive sign I can see for the housing market. When you have massive immigration, government should start doing something to start more projects. Government already started lending construction loan to developers at a lower mortgage rate, but let's see how it plays out. In my view, the condo market, especially the micro-sized condo that are like 500, 600 square feet, those kind of condos are going to have a very tough time in the next couple of years. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any question, please let us know and see you in the next video. Thank you.